Can loving Star Wars really inspire your writing? Hello, I'm Jason Inman, and this is Mythmakers, a writing podcast. My goal is to interview writers, actors, and creators on some of their favorite stories to dive deep and learn with you more about their storytelling process. I think how people contemplate their favorite movies and television gives us a mirror into their creative process, into how they make modern myths, if you will. Today's guest is Michael Moreci. He's the author of Black Star Renegades, some issues of Superman for DC, Wasted Space from Vault Comics, and Rosh Limit from Image. So let's dive deep and talk about story. All right, Mike, thanks for joining us on the podcast, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, now before we get into your favorite fictional character, your favorite book, your favorite movie, I want to talk to you about how you write. Like, what is your process for writing? Are you a morning guy? Are you an evening guy? Do you have to be in a special room? What is your writing process?
None of that stuff. And I know some people are dedicated to that, but I'm a write all the time person just by necessity. I wear a lot of hats. I do a lot of writing. I work pretty often, and generally, on the days that I write, I juggle writing with taking care of my two boys. But when I write, it's I get up and I get the day started, and then I have my time and I write for a good 8 to 10 hours. And part of that, take some breaks. Maybe I'll read a little bit, but generally, I'm at the computer writing. And
is that your preferred way to write instead of or are you more? Do you ever dabble in notebooks?
I do. I use notebooks for idea development. So I'll have notebooks for different things I'm working on, and that's where I kind of jot down just like little snippets of things, world building stuff, character stuff, just kind of ideas and stuff that wouldn't find its way into that wouldn't find its way. Oh, sorry, Mike.
If you have an important writing call, you can take that. It's okay.
No, I had my phone off, but I forgot my phone is connected to my computer. So that was the sound of that. I don't know who that was, so no, to answer your question, yeah. So it's just basically snippets of here and there stuff that wouldn't find its way into the story exactly, but it helps me kind of just get things going, get the ball rolling, get my feet under me in terms of figuring out what the story is, what the thing is.
Well, let me ask you this. You're now at a point where writing is basically your full-time job, correct?
Yes, exactly.
How long ago did you have a job that wasn't writing? How many years ago was this?
A little over 2, and
okay.
That actually ties into your first question, because when I was working, I worked full-time at my alma mater, Northwestern University. And when I was working, I was still writing a lot. I was still writing comics regularly. And so I would write whenever I had a chance. I wrote during breaks. I wrote during lunch. I wrote late at night. I wrote in the morning. I wrote anytime I could, because I was just trying to squeeze in that time. So now I did that for years. So now my mind is so trained that I don't really need to be touched by the muses, Mm-hmm. I just write whenever the hell I have time. I sit down and do it. It's a job. I love my job, but it's a job, and you just have to go and do it.
Now, you write comic books. You also write novels and stuff like that. And I've seen, by the way, listeners, Mike has an amazing newsletter that I believe you can find on your website, correct?
Yes. Yeah, you can subscribe to my newsletter through my website, michaelpmoreci.com.
Well, Michael in there, he drops lots of little writing tips and this stuff and like that. And your Twitter is great for that as well. I saw on your Twitter a while back, you posted this big wall of note cards. And I believe that was for one of your novels. Now, is that a really great way for you to work your stories out when you're plotting?
Yes, that was. I'm actually looking at it right now because I haven't taken it down. That was for Black Star Renegades. I did the same for both novels, for parts 1 and 2, and I'm way more of a they say that the common thing is a plotter or a pantser. So you plot things out, you outline, or you just go by the seat of your pants.
Mm-hmm.
I'm way more of a plotter. I stand by the 3 act structure, and it's not only a way to, kind of, like, for lack of a better term, structure your story. I think it's a way to help figure out what's going to happen next. Because if you know the structure, you kind of know, like, okay, I'm in the middle of Act 2, like, this is what should be happening now. So you can kind of use that as a guide to help figure out when you hit that wall. So I definitely plot out a lot. And then in that case, I actually wrote the note cards. The wall that you're talking about is like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. And, broke it down by chapters, and each chapter it's like, okay, here's what's happening in the story, here's what's happening thematically, here's what's happening to characters, here's what's happening visually.
Do you ever find yourself
all compartmentalized?
Do you ever find yourself doing the cards for a comic script?
No, because like comics, they're so short, 20 pages,
Mm-hmm.
22 maybe. It's so hard to like really kind of like, they have their own rhythm. You don't have that whole full 3 act structure in a comic. Sort of, like, but like you don't really have that like really fully developed. You have a full Act 1, full Act 2, full Act 3, the way you have in a book or a movie. Anything that you have more real estate. Comics is 20 pages. They have their own structure and their own rhythm, and
Mm-hmm.
I love it, and they work for storytelling, particularly for serialized storytelling. But like for an issue, you just can't get into that level of like of an arc. I don't think, at least.
Yeah. I just curious about that. Then what would you tell people out there, that are thinking about writing novels, that are thinking about writing comic books? Which one do you like one more than the other? Do you like comics or novels better when you're writing them?
No, because they both have like things that I really love about both. Like for a novel, I liked the isolation. I liked, it's like you go off into the wilderness and alone and come back with a book,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like just a man alone. But comics, I do like the collaboration. I love working with artists and letters and colorists, and
That's one of the things I've discovered too, and I just want to tell everybody listening is that comic book artists of all types, art, colorists, inkers, pencilers, they always make your stuff look so much better. And
Yes.
And let me ask you this, because you've worked on some professional books, like you've worked on Superman, Nightwing. Does it ever change when you get the art in? You're just like, wow.
Oh no, that never gets old. I think I've had a conversation actually with that recently with somebody who way more seasoned than me, and we were talking about getting our comps in the mail. And when I get my comps in the mail, my comic comps, I am still just like delighted like a child. Just like, oh my god, like. And he was like, I get these comps in the mail, whatever. And I'm like, what? I'm like, this is like it's like
free
Christmas.
comics.
Yeah, it's like these comics I did just arrive at my door, and I'm just like thrilled. And that's I've written quite a few comics now, and it never gets old.
Let me ask you this: when you are developing new stories, whether they're novels or comic books, do you usually start based off of a character, or is it like a moment or a scene? Like, what usually inspires your new stories?
Whew, that's a good one. I wish I knew. I think for comics, it's characters. Like if I were writing, like one of my dream jobs in comics is to write the Teen Titans. I love the Teen Titans or the Titans. I love those characters.
Mm-hmm.
I love the dynamic. I like writing about younger characters. And if I were doing that, it would be way more character first. It'd be like, who are the Titans? What can I say about Robin and Wally and whoever, Beast Boy, all these characters? What can I say about these guys that haven't been said already? I mean, because that's what's really driving comics, especially when you have 30, 40, 60, however many years behind you. It's like, okay, what can I do with these characters that somebody else hasn't done? And then you think about where they should go as characters, and then you just kind of shove that into a story, a good story, hopefully, but like a story nonetheless. For novels, it's different. I think it's a blend of both. Like I want to tell a certain type of story. Like I like telling what I did in Black Star, like a space adventure story. So it's like, okay, what do I do with a space story? What kind of space story do I want to tell? And this kind of like figuring out what that'll look and feel like, what the world is like, and then that's kind of more story stuff. Then you're putting characters that are populating that world, secondary to the overarching world and story and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's dive into some of these questions because I want to figure out how your mind works. Michael, who is your favorite fictional character? If you want to hear more of this podcast, you can hear the full episode over at patreon.com/Jawiin. That's Jawiin. My patrons are the whole reason that this dream podcast of mine happened. So head over there and become a patron if you want to hear the full podcast episode. Thanks for listening.